Good afternoon, everybody. How's it hanging? All right, cool. We should be live across the board here. Really? Is it down ticking on that? I gotta do the disclosure. I'm an associate member of T3 Trading Group, which is an SEC registered broker dealer and member of FINRA. All of my trades are placed through T3 Trading Group. You should carefully consider whether trading is suitable for you in light of your own financial condition. There is my position disclosure. It should be unchanged from yesterday. Feel free to pause if you need to look at it. Uh, Palantir not really down ticking on that. The COO sold 5.25 million worth of shares for $368. Yeah, we saw that happening. We saw that happening in real time today at $70. Be curious to see what the average price is on those sales. Good for them. You know, they're selling an expensive stock to whoever the heck wants to buy it up here. uh, $368 million worth of proceeds. Um, Stock appears to be holding in just fine. It's actually still up a few cents after hours here. Whew, I got smoked today. I got more smoke today than I've gotten smoked in quite some time. I've got all these longs on, and I've really got just kind of one short on, which is a heavy short, to be honest. But it was a day where breath was poor, so my longs didn't really participate very much, kind of across the board. But my short was the strongest stock in the entire market, which was this Palantir here. Um, so we can circle back on that. Let's start with the market. So Spies here closed positive 0.12%. They're upticking a little bit after hours here with the CRM earnings that came out. Salesforce is trading higher. Um, so not bad. Green market. Qs here, it's where the relative strength was. Qs are now up 0.5%. They're trading also a little bit higher from where they closed. And the IWM was relatively weak again, closing down 0.75%. With the TLT down 0.8%, so interest rates were higher. So it makes sense that you're going to get IWM weakness when that occurs. And the dollar actually finishing flat. It was a little bit weaker at one point during the day today. Let's take a look at these daily charts. So SPY intraday, once again, nothing much going on here with the SPYs. SPYs with this positive gamma environment, we talked about it a little bit in the morning meeting today. You can also refer back to Pat's note this morning, which was a great primer on how the vol selling leads to very tight realized vol, not big movements for the S&P, but that actually creates a lot of dispersion underneath the surface where it basically means that if the S&P can't really move more than 0.5% in either direction on a closing basis, but you're going to have like let's just say Nvidia, because it's like the biggest market cap company out there, or Apple, second biggest market cap company out there, I believe. Apple's up 1.25%. If you're going to have Apple up 1.25%, it inherently means that almost everything else has to trade a little bit more weak and a little bit more down. So just another day here with the spies did basically nothing. With Apple up 1.25%, Nvidia's up 1.25%. So really just a few stocks carried the weight. So you can look at the SPY I just mentioned closed, flat small green. But if you look at the RSP closed down 0.3%. So last I saw, only 30% of stocks were positive, yet the S&P itself finished positive. So again, it's just a dispersion day there. Um, and that has been kind of the name of the game here at a certain point. If there's a really strong underlying bid still to this market as well, that can kind of enable the broader market grind up just to continue to occur, and that's what we're looking for. So from a market perspective, nothing different, nothing unusual here at all. Um, just a poor breath day. But that also was in line with what I've been looking for with this Q catch up trade that we've noted the last couple of days. So Q's catching up here, 3 strong days in a row. They broke out to new all time highs I guess they technically did yesterday on a closing basis as well. They really were able to confirm that today. Whereas the IWM, I had mentioned after this huge move here, it got really extended. We know that. And it's corrected for four, now five trading sessions. But that spread between the 8 and 21 EMA was still really very wide. So to me, a lot of times that signals that you might need like a little bit bigger of a pause than just a quick snap to the 8 EMA. But underneath the surface, it's healthy rotation. And when the Russell needs to take a break, so breath was a little bit poor, Apple, Nvidia, the Qs, they take the baton and they continue this market higher, which then enables these spies just to continue to be like flat positive almost every day and kind of continue this upside grind. So none of that's unusual at all. My best trade of the day was this PSQH. It did pretty well with it, mainly pre-market actually. I thought that the news was official about Trump Jr. joining this thing pre-market. I guess it was only a rumor at that point, and then they halted and confirmed it at 135, and that created this whole little leg higher. But there was this big seller at $4. I was buying beneath four. I added actually at four, caught this break up. I liquidated the position in the opening 5 minute candle at like 5 quarter or so. But it was a pretty good trade. And then they, I guess, officially confirmed it. Though it looked like the exact same headline to me at 135. And then they ripped it up a whole nother leg. So that was still my best name on the day. Um, what did this AT&T end up doing out of curiosity? Because that was the other one I had written down on my radar to watch, but I don't like to trade this name because it's slow. Yeah, that worked actually pretty well on the long side. And then I got extra smoked in Palantir today, which just is what it is. And I kind of went over my trade idea pre-market, and I don't really feel like I did. I didn't trade it great, but I don't really feel like I did too much wrong on this thing either. It's just I'm already swinging it. It took that next leg higher that I kept expecting it to take, and it just didn't do it. And the only difference was that today it actually took that next leg higher that I've been looking for it to take, but it was on the day when I actually thought that it could break down. I actually thought that this thing was actually setting up to break a little bit lower pre-market. So in the pre-market price action, hindsight's 2020 here. So let's just go back to the pre-market real quick. In the pre-market price action, so we know the story. There's been a big seller above 67 for several days. Actually, let me go back to the daily really quick. There's been a big seller above 67 for kind of several days in a row here. I thought the stock should have gone on the 25th, and it should have gone again yesterday. And then it's just been continuing to not give continuation when it, kind of should have. And we know that there's been a big seller there. So you're building out what's technically a bullish wedge, but there is also a lot of spread down to where this 21 EMA is. And when it couldn't go again yesterday, and that seller was still there yesterday, and then you combine that with there was news out pre-market in Palantir that I thought should be interpreted bullish in relation to their business dealings with the government, and I thought it should be interpreted bullish. There was a quick little pop here at like 7 a.m. and then by 8:50s we're kind of going into the morning meeting. This thing was actually breaking down to new pre-market lows. It was breaking below 66. So when this thing started to break below pre-market lows and below 66. The daily candle that was beginning to form, I know that the day hadn't even officially started yet, was actually starting to look like it was going to apply a lot of pressure on this ADMA, break this accelerated uptrend. And I felt that if this thing really cleared through yesterday's low, they would go after this ADMA on the daily. If they went after this ADMA on the daily and started to break this wedge down, that you would actually finally get a failure on that. And it would make sense when you've been running into all this overhead supply at $67. So I got like I said 3 times already, extra smoked in this stock because I'm looking at everything I normally like to see in a trade, except for one thing. I'm looking at news that's not being interpreted positively. I'm looking at a break of a trend line. I'm looking at overhead supply. I'm looking at extension compared to the 21. The only thing that I don't like about the trade, and I did mention this in the morning meeting, is as a general rule, I really don't like to short strong stocks into the rising moving average. I like to short a strong stock because it got absurdly extended to the upside like that UMAC did after, and I'm just using this as an example because it was so recent. Um, this thing has three huge up days in a row. It's a massive day four gap up. There's huge extension away from the moving averages. That's when I like to short strong stocks. Obviously, you're still going to be careful because momentum's a hell of a thing, and they can rip your face off with this, especially if it's like a low floater. But we talked about this in yesterday's afternoon meeting, so I'm not gonna overly recap yesterday's afternoon meeting. You can go back and watch the YouTube video of it. But normally, I don't like to short strong stocks into rising moving averages or buy weak stocks into declining moving averages. It just generally sets you up for a worse risk reward and a lower probability of success on the trade. One thing though that I've been working on because I'm always trying to improve my own trading has been trying to identify spots where you can get more like momentum breaks of patterns. And I've actually been having decent success with that. I've been doing a little bit more on the day trading side than on like the daily candle side. Um, but I've had good success in that in certain spots and on trades that I've called out over the course of the last couple months here to the team where like I don't know. Just like a Nvidia chart that kind of is ingrained in my memory a little bit. I can't tell you which day it was or at what price it was trading, but I just remember like watching the support level, watching the lower high and the pressure into the support level. I'm like calling out to the team and saying, "Hey, I'm actually going to add down," which traditionally that's not what I do. I've never been the type of trader who is long and then adds up or is short and then adds down. I remember being out, I was already short Nvidia for whatever reason, and I was like, "Oh, I'm actually going to add down on the breakthrough of this level because I think that that'll actually create momentum on a breakdown of a pattern of like a bullish pattern." And the trade worked great. I read it really well. So trying to apply that thought process here when there was a lot of other things that I liked, especially with that pre-market price action. So started shorting some pre-market. I actually got partialed on the bid. I wish I'd gotten the full fill at the pre-market low of 65, 62. And when I got partialed there, I was like, great, I'm gonna get the rest of that fill, and we're breaking below 66. We're going after this daily ADMA, and it's gonna break it, and that this trade's gonna be money. And I took a whole bunch of extra size above what I was already swinging to kind of go for it. And then the second this stock opened up at 9:30, that buyer just came in and was relentless. Just absolutely and utterly relentless on the bid. The underlying bid on this stock was so strong. I don't know if it's the news that all of a sudden the market decided to cared about or exactly what the situation is. Actually, kind of maybe have an idea of what the situation is, but I'll circle back to that in a second as well. Um, but they just ripped this thing up to $70. Like what a monster rip. I mean, I was comparing this rip compared to on the daily chart some of the biggest up moves over the course of this entire situation here. Like on this day here, which is one of the bigger volume days on November 15th, the stock gave like a $5 in like full day move, like lows to highs. I didn't know it was more than that because there was a gap up there, but it was like a full $5 intraday move. And I know the stock's just a little bit more expensive now, and I'm not comparing percentages, but this move here from low to highs was a $4 move. So almost as big as that entire biggest daily candle, except it did it in like 15 minutes basically. It was an insane rip your face off rally. And then the seller came back. The same seller that we keep kind of seeing come all over the place. Like whoever Palantir is using for that in insider selling that they're doing. Like we just saw that the COO sold 5 million shares today. Um they're using the same broker because it's the same algorithm that's working it. It's the same price action that we saw when the CEO sold for several days in a row. That was back at like $63. Now we got the COO selling. Um, so it was so clear that there was just that same massive seller at 70, but the trader works the order. They will be sitting at $70, refreshing, lift, let the thing spike up, then cross all the way back down on the bid. This was a big one here. Did it all the way up to $70.75, $70.73. Let it lift. Let all the momentum buying start coming in again. Let all the bids spread up. and then just cross that offer all the way back down to $70. And that's actually what triggered the deepest pull in the stock during the entirety of the day today, and was a pretty good short. Um, I was doing my best to work this range. Yeah, seriously, I was doing my best to work this range. I must have shorted 69.99 and covered 69.89, 69.90 for 10 cents profit on not a huge amount of stock, but I must have done that like 40 times before the seller ran out of stock to sell, and it almost seemed like it was inevitable. The amount of like I was mind blown on both sides of this trade. It like I couldn't take my eyes off it. I almost didn't watch anything else throughout the entirety of the day because I was so fascinated by this. I'm like, how much stock does this seller actually have to sell up here? Like this is incredible how much selling is going on here. But the flip side of that is every time there was a 100 share uptick into that seller at $70, someone bought it. Like someone was still like aggressively buying into that seller at $70. And that's why there were no real pullbacks here. You know, sometimes you get a quick pullback similar to when it did happen once. Because you get buyers that buy 70 or buy above 70, they get jammed, and then that forces a sell-off to come in. Um, I think that those buyers were still getting jammed because it wouldn't break 70, but they were just then selling right into this massive bid that refused to break. Finally, this thing tightened up so massively here, and I communicated it via chat in the VTF. I was like, I've been working this range here, but it's too tight. It's too tight. It's either gonna go now or it's not. It's like one direction or the other. Somebody's got to fail here. The buyer or the seller's got to fail, and then we're gonna get a feedback cycle and a move in one direction or the other. And I guess that's when the seller finished the order. I guess that's when our COO got done putting $368 million in his or her pocket. And then you just got a leg higher for, another dollar and a quarter. So it was just a massive move. Um, the underlying bid in this thing has been absolutely incredible. Bill at one point today likened it to Tesla, in terms of like who is buying here, and it just seems like it's a lot of these forced, almost passive buy flows that are coming in, and the price action on how Palantir is trading here a little bit, and actually I'm really curious to see what this does tomorrow, because this reminds me of what it did on the 15th very much. Like this buying that we saw today was the same buying that we saw on the 15th, that just insane, massive buying that was coming in. And then the next day, though, that algorithm wasn't there anymore. That buy algo was not there anymore. And then the next day, it broke the previous day's low. I'm not saying that, tomorrow we're going to break today's low, but that's certainly what happened on this day. And I wouldn't have predicted it to close on the 15th either. If anything, I would have predicted that this was a day one that leads to a day two. And this should be the same, honestly. This is a day one. Stock is accelerating up out of its trend. It should actually lead to a day two. It should lead to like a blow off top at $77 after 3 trading sessions or something like that. That's like what should happen. But when Bill mentioned that Tesla example, it actually reminded me of how Tesla traded back, and I don't know the dates. I wish I had time to do research. Pretty sure that was near the top. I think this was when Tesla got added to, was it the S&P? Was it the Nasdaq? I forget. But I remember on that like ad day, it was like the craziest day. I think it was somewhat near the top. And there was just so much forced buying that was coming into this thing from multiple places. Forced buying from, being added to an index, forced buying to, that was also coming from these gamma squeezes that were coming in, or just the short term out of the money call options were just going off so consistently that they were ripping the stock higher. But I also remember, interestingly enough, that on some of these days, and I'm not even sure exactly when this was. I don't know if this was the run up in late 2020, early 2021, or if this was the run up that was more in like in the final move here. But I remember in some of those days, going back to Palantir now, that you would have this massive, massive, massive underlying like buy algorithm coming in that was coming from this gamma squeeze or this force buying or wherever it was specifically coming from. And then the very next day it would just be off. And the stock would close on highs, very similar to what Palantir did on the 15th. And then the next day that buy algorithm would just be off and you wouldn't get the day two and you would actually get a deeper pullback. And that was actually like exactly what happened here on that massive buy day on the 15th into the 18th. So I'm kind of more intellectually curious more than anything tomorrow on how this thing actually trades because it should, and I said it back here as well, and I said it also on this day on the 25th. This is another one. Strong close, not as crazy as today, not as crazy as the 15th, but strong close. Should have given a day two. They gapped it up and sold it. Um, Tomorrow is another situation. They should give a day two on this thing tomorrow. They really should. They should be able to double today's move tomorrow. That's what momentum looks like. So if today was another $5 move in the stock that closed us around $71, tomorrow we should be able to get to 76, 77, or maybe even extend beyond that upper 70s, $80. And then the day three would really be the day to look for that like extension short that's similar to what I'm talking about with like the UMAC chart that I just brought up for lack of a better recent example. Um, that's one way in which this can definitely play out. Another way in which this can play out is also that buyer is just gone tomorrow, similar to what we saw on those other days. And then this thing is surprisingly weak tomorrow. And if anyone remembers this day, I remember it because I was in the name. It just got destroyed in the first 15 minutes immediately off the open. You could see a similar situation actually happen tomorrow if that buyer is not there and maybe retail is like trying to wake up a little bit and say, why am I trying to be diamond hands when the insiders keep selling millions of shares at a clip? It seems obvious to me that the insiders know that their stock is expensive. If I was them, I'd be selling too. But the forced buying that's coming into this is just it's just been crazy. We saw Nvidia. I know it's back to new highs now also. But remember all those Jensen Huang sell orders that were coming up here when Nvidia was seeming a little bit expensive as well. I would argue that Nvidia there at those prices though is significantly cheaper than Palantir here at these prices. But we know that fundamentals don't matter on a day-to-day basis, right? Fundamentals maybe matter if we're looking at a 5 to 10 year horizon, but they don't matter today. They're not going to matter tomorrow. But they are, something I think to think about when you're thinking about the insider selling that's coming in as well. When these executives are viewing their own stock as expensive, and they know that there's all this buying that's coming in, that's a great opportunity for them to have the buy flow that's necessary to be able to sell 5 million shares, which they were able to do. And what did the CEO sell in this run? Um, is it 18 million shares? I think it was 6 million shares over like on 3 different days each. Maybe it was 6 million shares over the course of 3 days, but I think it was 6 million shares on like three different days in a row there. So yeah, so we'll see what happens with this Palantir. I'm still short. I got my face ripped off in it today. Um, it is what it is. Sometimes it's part of trading. All I can do is own my losses. So that's what I'm gonna do here today. I'm gonna lick my wounds and own my losses and go back to the battle tomorrow. I got hurt in this thing both on a swing, obviously, but I also got hurt on it just on how I traded it intraday. To be honest, there were some spots here where I looked like I was gonna save myself, like this down move here. But honestly, I didn't quite cover enough into this down move. If I could have gotten a little bit more on that down move, I would have been able to kind of save myself on the intraday trading of it. Instead, I got double smoked. I got smoked on my swing. I got smoked primarily on what I did with it intraday. And I don't think anybody can ever accuse me of not owning my losses. So I'll continue to do so as long as you guys will allow me the privilege of owning my winners as well, because they tend to happen a little bit more often, I think, than the losers. So that is all I've got. I'm happy to answer any questions. I do have to go somewhere today, so I don't have a ton of time, but I've definitely got till at least 5 o'clock. So uh, any questions that anybody has, I'm happy to answer. I'm not seeing anything in the VTF yet, so feel free to post. Let me hop over to the uh, uh, hop over to the YouTube here. From Uvixi Bull, what price increments are you using on the T triple Qs these days? It depends on the trade. I don't have a trade right now on the T triple Q. It depends on what I'm doing. Sometimes I use 10 cents, but that's pretty aggressive. Most of the time I use 25 cents because it's a little bit less aggressive, and T triple Q is getting expensive these days. It's a $83 ETF. Um, from Divide in the YouTube. I'm having a hard time trying to decide when to sell my Palantir, currently up 110%. Wow, who's better than you? 110%, not bad. Um, Look, I'm biased obviously because I'm short the stock, but I think that what you want to do, and this is kind of my go-to answer when people ask these questions, I think what you want to do is follow the game plan that you have for the trade. And hopefully you had a game plan when you entered the trade, and if so, you just want to follow it. So whether that means that you're implementing some sort of system of trailing stop, then continue to follow that system of trailing stops. Or if you're have a price target, sell your price target. If you uh are selling out incrementally on the way up, sell it incrementally on the way up. That's the best answer. I'll also say though, if it so happens that you don't really have a game plan for this and you're trying to figure out what to do, we can come up with some potential ideas for you. So obviously, you want to maximize your reward on this thing. We saw some $100 calls go off today for February. Maybe that guy makes money or gal, and they make it in the money at a certain point by February, and it's over $100. I have no idea. Anything can happen in markets. I do think personally the stock is pretty expensive fundamentally, but we need a technical game plan. So technical game plan could be to continue to trail. You could use today's low, honestly, because it pretty much coincides with the 80 MA on the daily as a trailing stop. You could also use, like, I would say the most recent major pivot low on this thing is from November 26th. You could use that low as a trailing stop. That's a couple options for you. Or another thing I like to do is sell into extreme extension. So if you get what I'm talking about, where you do get, and I do think it's a possibility, a day two that leads to a day three that gets you into the upper 70s or 80s, if that happens in a very short period of time over the course of the next couple of days, then the stock is going to be absurdly extended to the upside. That looks like a climactic top at that point. I would sell into that move. So if it was my position, I would either trail based on some way that I mentioned, or I would sell into a climactic move. That's what I would look to do. I don't think I would sell here at $71 necessarily, but depending on how heavy you are, it might make sense just to take a little bit off here today as well, just because you've done such a good job with it so far. So I hope that helps in your question. From Kevin, would it be fair to say that today is an inside day due to yesterday's uptrend? Possible consolidation for tomorrow's continuation. I'm not sure if you're referring to the indexes. None of the indexes are an inside day. So would it be fair to say that today is an inside day due to yesterday's uptrend? I don't understand where you see an inside day. Uh, oh, the spies were an inside day, right? Or did we break the low by a very little bit? Sorry, I'm looking at the daily candle, and after hours we broke yesterday's high. Yeah, today is an inside day. Sorry, I didn't realize that. Wow, that's interesting because yesterday was so tight. Yesterday was a super, super tight day. Hold on, did I just misread that chart? No, it's not an inside day. We broke yesterday's low today. It's not an inside day. That's the spies. Qs are not an inside day. IWM is definitely not an inside day. I need a little more clarity. Qs. Qs broke yesterday's high, so they're also not an inside day. They're tighter days. We're just kind of continuing this upside grind, and I know we're up more here after hours because of some of the earnings reports, like from CRM. But I keep it simple. I get what you're trying to say. Like, it's not an inside day, but should we like consider it an inside day because it was so tight? I don't do it that way. I keep it simple, stupid. It's not technically an inside day, even if we broke yesterday's high or low by 1 penny. So therefore it's just not. So then it's not doesn't have that same execution setup for me. From Rex in the VTF on Reddit, I was looking back through 140 on 11/29. Okay. I think that was the half day. Um, it gave an inside and up, but it just being weak while the market was so strong, still being relatively weak yesterday. Okay. Still being relatively weak yesterday while the market was trading up all day. This morning, it just ripped higher without news or anything while the market was moving sideways. Can you talk about is there a way to capture to capture a trade like this, or if it's just gonna be a stock that goes without a trade? Yeah, I mean, we like to work in layers of probability, right? That's the way we like to think about trading is all of the potential influencing factors. So what you're describing here is some layers of probability against continuation, like the relative weakness over the course of those last couple of days. There's also layers of probability that could point out that are pro continuation, that it's in an uptrend, that there is no extension. So I think that all you're kind of letting me know here is that you could have been long Reddit, but it just not would not have been an A plus trade. So then it's just a matter of you deciding whether you think it's worth it to get involved. And then whether or not you think it's worth it to get involved just matters the risk reward on your entry price versus the probability of success is the uptrend and the fact that the market's strong going to at a certain point outweigh the fact that the stock had a couple days of relative weakness. One of which again was the Friday after Thanksgiving, so I wouldn't overly read price action that comes from the Friday after Thanksgiving. You could see there was no volume on that day at all. So I think that's basically it. I think you're just describing to me, a B level trade as opposed to an A plus level trade, and it's just a matter of whether or not it's worth it for you individually to take it or not. So if you decided that it wasn't, I can't fault you for it. If you decided that it is and you took it, I can't fault you for that either. So we'll see. From Tate, thoughts on Cliff. So one thing you got to remember about CLF here is that they are. I don't know to what degree because I have not been overly following the drama on U.S. Steel, but they had been involved in a bid for U.S. Steel, which will have an impact on the stock. I remember. I think we saw yesterday that Donald Trump said that he was not going to allow the Japanese company, I think it's called Nippon or Nippon. Probably don't know how to pronounce it. I've only ever read the name. I've never heard it pronounced. Um, that Donald Trump is not going to allow the Japanese company to buy U.S. Steel. So the first thing I actually did was type up U.S. Steel. The second thing I actually did was type up CLF to see if that news is actually impacting CLF because maybe CLF comes in and has a higher probability of becoming a buyer for U.S. Steel at this point. I don't know. I really don't know. Like I said, I haven't overly followed the story, but I think if you're thinking about CLF on the bigger picture, you need to know the story. So I would start by doing research to be more knowledgeable in the situation than I am. Beyond that, I don't know. Chart. I like CLF as a company at these prices, just very broadly speaking. Chart's a little bit sloppy here. 13's a little bit of a level. I think 14 and 11 are much more important. So, you start getting much better confirmation if you can get a breakout through this $14 level. Here, 13 looks like it's a little bit important. It was previous resistance. It was previous support. It was previous resistance again. It's trying to get above that again now. So you can watch that 13. If it's above it, the long looks a little bit better, but really it's got to clear through 14. So I don't have a strong opinion for you on it. The technicals look wishy-washy to me. I do like the company big picture, but I would say you gotta have a better understanding than I do of what's going on with the U.S. Steel. All right. Anything else? Not sure. I don't understand your comment there, Edward, in the YouTube. But if you want to explain a little better, happy to answer. But otherwise, it looks like I kind of got through things for today. I don't mind doing a quicker meeting today because, like I mentioned, I got to leave a little early today. So going once, going twice. All right. Well, we will end it there then. Have a wonderful night, everybody. I will see you tomorrow. We'll see. We'll we'll see how things gap tomorrow. I pressed the microphone off button before I was done speaking. Have a great night, everybody.